Welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Markus Karlsson. It's been a year since more than 1,100 women, men and children died in the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh. An 8-story building full of garment workers came crashing down in one of the worst industrial accidents the world has ever seen. The disaster was seen to blow the cover of fast fashion, major brands that order in bulk and with quick lead times to satisfy the changing tastes of Western shoppers. There have been horror stories of poorly designed buildings, mistreatment of workers and bad pay, and those stories have put pressure on major brands to change their ways. Has that happened, though? To help us understand where the fashion industry is 1 year on, we can turn to journalist Lucy Siegel, ethical living columnist for the British newspaper The Observer. She's also the woman behind the 2011 book To Die For, Is Fashion Wearing Out the World? And in her recent book, We Are What We Wear, she looks into the Rana Plaza disaster. First of all, welcome to the programme, Lucy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let me first get to the main question at this point, I suppose. Has the situation of garment workers in Bangladesh improved since the Rana Plaza factory disaster? Are they facing the same risks now as they were a year ago?
Well, in a way, it is too early to tell, because any initiatives that have been implemented, and there are a couple, which you'll have to forgive me, they all have very similar names. So we have the Accord, the Alliance and the Agreement. The Accord is to do with building structures and building surveying, which we haven't seen before in Bangladesh, which is a very, very welcome idea. The Alliance is a version of that, which has been set up by primarily by American companies, Gap and Walmart, who didn't want to be part of the Accord, and the Agreement is about compensation. Now, it is really too early to tell what effect those different innovative initiatives will have. What we can say is that we have seen some breakthroughs, but I have to really couch that, and we have to be, really kind of careful about how we define a breakthrough. This industry lags way behind other sectors. And those of us who've been writing about particularly fast fashion for a number of years have been flagging up the problems in the supply chain, the flashpoints, if you like, which were always going to lead to a massive disaster. Rana Plaza, unfortunately, was a catastrophe waiting to happen. So we probably need another sort of 18 months or so to understand whether the Accord, for example, has really made a massive difference. A report came out at the beginning of this week from New York University Stern Business School showing how actually the Accord, just to be quite technical for a minute, deals with first-tier factories, and actually the really big problem is subcontracting to second and third tier factories. So what we arguably don't yet understand is how we're going to get across the supply chain and clean this up. It is incredibly complex.
What's your gut feeling when it comes to the Accord, when it comes to the Alliance? On top of that, we've had a salary hike for Bangladeshi workers, or the minimum wage in Bangladesh has come up for garment workers. What's your gut feeling? Is the situation going to improve?
My gut feeling is not terribly optimistic, I have to say, because I'm afraid I find the fast fashion industry, for all its incredible design, innovation, logistics, prowess, sclerotic. I find that when it comes to labour rights, particularly to garment workers' rights, it is not really prepared to go the distance, actually, and not really able to, because its business model is quite exacting about this particular chain. There are 101 steps in theory to making each garment, from the conception through to putting it in store. There's only sort of 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 steps, which are actually the production steps done by this cut, make and trim army, as I call these millions of workers in Bangladesh, Cambodia, Thailand, elsewhere. And really, they are where the margins are squeezed, where all of the pressure is exerted onto the most vulnerable and exploited workers. Now, we can do a little bit about cost, because I think that all the studies show that actually you wouldn't have to put up the price of garments that significantly to really make an impact with living wage.
How much would costs have to go up, and how much would the price of a garment go up?
In terms of how much the cost of a garment would go up, there's been quite a lot of substantive research which shows it would be as little as 50 cents. You know, if we're talking in dollars. So it's really very, very minimal.
So when it comes to your rating of major retailers who are still working in Bangladesh, how do you rate them? And what do they need to do in order to improve the situation? And are they doing just that?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to say that the really good thing that happened after Rana Plaza, if you can even say really good thing, which sounds strange given over 1,000 people were killed and 2,500 were injured severely, is that they didn't cut and run. They didn't say, right, that's it, we're off, which actually some other American brands did. Now, what we do have with some of the European retailers, the big European retailers, is a level of dialogue. They also are placing orders directly in the country, whereas the very, very big brands in, say, Japan are using sourcing companies, and they are very difficult to penetrate, so we don't really know where they are sourcing from and what they're doing. So we have a level of control and we need to maximise this opportunity as campaigners, concerned consumers, whatever. So some of the brands were very quick to respond. They admitted that they had been producing in Rana Plaza. Some did not. The ones that admitted get brownie points for that because it stops investigators having to sift through the rubble and find their labels and link them to the tragedy. They were quick to pay short-term compensation. So, props to all of the companies that did that and drove these agreements. They also accepted a certain amount of liability for the first time ever, which, to my mind, the alliance, the alternative code, if you like, which has been signed up to or initiated by the big brands, doesn't accept the same sort of liability, in my opinion. So that is all moving in the right direction. However, my real concern is that the brands really have a sort of culture where they have to be in control. They're very competitive against each other. They don't like to produce data. They don't really like to say which factories they're using because they cite antitrust laws. And I think that is bad in a sense, because we're trying to open this up and we're trying to understand and unravel this supply chain. This is not a straightforward situation. So I think we have to watch and monitor very, very carefully. And people tell us, the brands say, we have the solution, we're cleaning up. Well, we have to see the proof. We really do.
So is it more of a PR effort at the moment from the brand side? Is that what you're saying?
There's been some amazing PR, I'll say that. Yeah, there's been some fantastic PR, and there has been, some very. It's probably, a lot of it might even be in good faith. But the trouble is, if you allow in the aftermath of a tragedy like this, if you allow the industry that is implicated to monitor and control itself and control negotiations, then obviously it will always do that from its vantage point. And we can see by some of the results, the financial results that have come out, that fast fashion is a cash cow. Mm-hmm. Investors are not saying, hey, stop, put the brakes on, we need to clean up the supply chain. The World Bank is not saying that. The World Bank report that came out very, very shortly before Rana Plaza said to Bangladesh, you need to put your foot on the accelerator. You need to be actually making the ready-made garment industry work harder.
But aren't we giving the retailers too hard of a time? I mean, at the end of the day, isn't this the responsibility of the Bangladeshi government to ensure the safety of its workers? As I say, aren't we basically putting too much pressure and too much emphasis on Western retailers to change the situation?
I think Western retailers with big famous brands will always be in the firing line. That goes with being a big famous brand, and that goes with reaping huge, outstanding, that's the word that's been used today, over Primark's profits, up by 13% or whatever it is. So there is a certain amount of flack which comes with that position. And we have seen it in lots of other sectors, you have to take responsibility for your supply chain. The host country, its government, obviously plays a massive part. Bangladesh decided to put all its eggs in the ready-made garment industry basket at the behest of the World Bank and other organisations, you know, many years ago, some 2 decades ago, and we need to make it work. So there are lots of shared responsibilities, but I don't think just saying, oh, it's the responsibility of the government really is the right thing to do, not when you look at the spectacular profits that are being made off the back of the workers in this country.
I want to ask a question that you yourself ask in your most recent book, We Are What We Wear. I'm wondering, is Bangladesh and Bangladeshi workers, are they better off with or without the garment industry? I suppose that's a crux issue as well at this point.
Yes, and that's a question that I ask because it's very hard to answer it, isn't it? It is, I mean, we have to put this in context, as we do in the book, and say that 4 million people are directly employed by the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. Now, 70 to 80% of those, depending on which set of statistics you look at, are women. So on paper, this looks like a massive opportunity. They're pretty much predominantly coming from rural areas where the opportunities are limited beyond belief, really. They're coming from abject poverty. However, does that mean that they should be exploited? Does that mean that they should move from that situation to become the lowest paid workers in the world or amongst them? Does it mean they should be locked into factories to finish orders? Does it mean that actually they should shoulder all of this risk, which, as I explained before, is being concentrated on this area? No, it doesn't. So is the ready-made garment industry vital to Bangladesh? Yes, at this juncture, it absolutely is. 4 million directly employed, probably another 4 million indirectly employed. It would be devastating if Bangladesh was to lose this. So there is something, you know, really important that's come from this industry to Bangladesh. And what we need to do is to restructure, understand, unravel the supply chain and make it work so we get the positive benefits for the workers there. And they need to be careful in Bangladesh because, let me tell you, some of the big retailers are already eyeing up other countries, other destinations, such as Burma, for example.
All right. With that note of caution, we're going to have to wrap it up there because we have run out of time. Lucy Siegel, I want to thank you indeed for taking the time to speak to us here at France 24. And with that, we're also going to be wrapping up this programme. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.